Hello, and welcome to the Coaching Revealed podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Matzelle. In this episode of Coaching Revealed, we interview Elix Cintron, an executive coach who specializes in working with C-suite transformation. In this conversation, we focus on Elix's role as a coach and member of the LGBTQ community. As a member of the Institute of Coaching, Elix has created a space for queer coaches and allies to have community, address challenges, and grow together. For coaches who are part of the LGBTQ community, as coaches don't know if an element of who they are may be rejected by clients, showing up as authentically yourself can be a challenge. He brings up the point that the future direction of coaching depends on our ability to create spaces where people do not have to choose between authenticity and belonging. We discuss Elix's career as a coach, and even times he was told that hiding parts of himself and relationships would be the best decision for his career. Through his experience and story, Elix shares ways that he has been able to continually show up with authenticity and found ways to bring vulnerability and listening to connect into coaching conversations. We close discussing more about the LGBTQ discussion group Elix has created at the Institute of Coaching and his vision for how coaching can usher in a sense of belonging for all coaches. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Coaching Revealed. And now, our conversation with Elix Cintron. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Coaching Revealed. I'm one of your hosts, Matzelle, and I'm very excited to be interviewing a member and good friend of the Institute, Elix Cintron, or Coach Elix. Elix, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Even better that I get to spend some time with you this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was great. We were just at the IOC's conference this last week or so, and so it's good to see you again on Zoom and have this conversation with you today. I'm very excited to get into your background and your work. We'll be focusing on coaching and coaching specifically in the LGBT space. I'm wondering, as you are thinking about your coaching career, what brings you to this space that you are in today?
That's a great question. So I started as a healthcare executive. I was in the healthcare industry as a chief business development person for a hospital system. And as part of that, I also led a program in New York City, very similar to the Dale Carnegie program, where leaders from all over the world, they apply, they get accepted, and they do the program in their regions, but they come together in different parts of the world. In this case, I led the Northeast region for the U.S. in New York City. And again, that program had a very strong coaching component to it. It was designed for leaders who wanted to be better at their leadership, whatever it is that they did. So that's the first time that I got exposed to coaching. And I did that for many years. And then in around 2000, I stopped doing the program, by the way, somewhere around 2004. I continue on with my career in the hospital system as a healthcare executive. I brought coaching through that to everything that I was doing. I was coaching my staff, but I was coaching it in not a formalized way. So somewhere around 2012, I had this aha moment and I decided, you know what? I need to go back. I need to get myself fully certified as a coach. And this is something that I really want to do because it felt purpose driven for me. So that's what I did. I went back, I got my certification as a coach. I got my credentials through the International Coaching Federation. Years later, I met Judith Glaser, who is a neuroscientist who wrote a book about conversational intelligence. Judith introduced me to the Institute of Coaching. I became a fellow with the Institute of Coaching. And then I had this other aha moment where I was like, wait a minute, this is what I should be doing full time. So I left my career as a healthcare executive and I opened up my practice as a coach, and I've been coaching ever since.
Very, very wonderful story, and very cool to hear about how you've had these moments that kind of drove you towards coaching over the years. It wasn't just an immediate switch to coaching, but kind of feels like coaching kept calling to you over time. Kind of getting into then what we'll be spending a lot of our day talking about. How has your identity as an LGBT individual, an LGBTQ coach, impacted you throughout your life and your career so far?
I would say my identity has taught me about resilience, about adaptability, about emotional awareness. There's moments where I've learned to read the environment for safety before fully expressing who I was. And by the way, from very early on, I I knew I was part of the queer community, and I felt that I had a responsibility to be that, to honor that for myself and for others. So my identity also has helped me create a heightened sensitivity to belonging and exclusion. It's deepened my empathy, my ability to connect with people who are navigating uncertainty, who are navigating identity of their own or fear. And at the same time, Austin, it has taught me the emotional cost of fragmentation and the power of finally feeling safe enough to be fully who I am.
I'm hearing you address this a little bit as you talk about navigating uncertainty, deepening your empathy, the cost of fragmentation of individuals. As you think about your coaching approach, how are there any other ways that your identities have impacted the way that you show up as a coach and the way that you show up to your clients?
Of course, I think my identities also allow me to approach coaching with deep empathy and curiosity. Empathy, because when I'm speaking to clients who are part of the LGBTQ plus community or other coaches, I hear their world. You know, in conversational intelligence, we have this distinction called listen to connect, which is very different than listening to understand or listening to confirm. Listening to connect, it's listening to really get somebody else's world. And I believe my identities have allowed me to approach coaching from that deep empathy and curiosity. I also pay very close attention to psychological safety in the emotional dynamics underneath every single conversation that I have. I certainly understand that people cannot fully grow when they're busy protecting themselves. And I understand that because I've been there. I've been in that space. So my approach emphasizes authenticity, trust, nervous system awareness, which is something that I've learned through the teachings of Judith Glaser, who was a mentor to me, in relational connection. I want my clients to feel that they do not need to be somebody that they're not in order to belong.
Yeah, you're really embodying being able to show up as yourself and then getting your clients and the people that you're working with and interacting with to be in that same space, which I think is such an important lesson for coaches to know, for everyone to know, to be able to be on that journey and working on. What does belonging look like to you then? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think you've hurt me. You know that who I am the unedited version of myself, no matter what I do, no matter who I am with and how I show up. So belonging to me is the freedom to show up without editing core parts of yourself. It is feeling psychologically safe enough to speak honestly, to ask questions, to take risk. Belonging for me is not just inclusion, it's being valued and respected exactly as you are, exactly as you're not. And in coaching, belonging creates the conditions for transformation. In fact, I believe belonging is foundational in coaching.
when you are showing up in your coaching sessions in your daily life exactly as you are, what are some of those qualities that you bring into relationship with people?
In terms of qualities, I'm authentic. What you see is what you get. I don't edit myself. I love to talk about my husband. I love to talk about, what we do, who we are, about our family, about our life. So that, that authenticity is perhaps one of those qualities that when I talk about belonging, that foundational that is so needed in this space, that's an example of the kind of quality that I bring into conversations. And in doing so, I believe that I create the space, I create the opening for others to feel safe so that they can too bring themselves fully to the conversation. And by the way, I am speaking not just about clients, I'm speaking about other coaches because the reality is, we are as if you're a coach and you are in the queer space and you yourself are strongly struggling with belonging, then the question is, how can you then support somebody that comes to you that's struggling with the same issue or something similar in that space? Probably very hard to do. So this is an opportunity. And I do believe as a coach, as a leader in the industry, I have a responsibility to create that space first for myself, but for others.
Let's go into a little bit on your blog and some of your writing. You've written a blog entitled When Belonging Feels Uncertain, the emotional toll of division on LGBTQ plus coaches, clients, and our profession. What inspired you to write this blog? Where was the driving factor for you?
I first and foremost, I wanted to bring language and visibility to an emotional experience that many of our queer community, LGBTQ plus coaches, clients, allies are quietly navigating. The article is really about the emotional toll of constantly assessing safety, constantly assessing belonging and authenticity. And I wanted to challenge the coaching profession to think more deeply about psychological safety and what it truly means to create inclusive spaces. This, to me, although politics plays a huge role in why I'm having this conversation, but to me, it's bigger than politics because it's about humanity, it's about our identity and belonging.
What are your thoughts on coaches showing up as fully themselves during sessions?
Oh my goodness, what an awesome question and such an important question for all of us. Coaching is relational. Presence matters. Now, clients can feel often when somebody is holding a part of themselves back. Showing up, fully does not really mean oversharing. So it doesn't mean that you're going to go in and you're going to tell them everything about you, but it really means showing up grounded, showing up authentic, and showing up congruent. To me, authenticity creates trust. And honestly, trust creates transformational conversations. And by the way, all of my work, it's founded on creating space for transformational conversations to emerge.
As you're thinking about building space for a transformational conversation, are there certain things that you do to assure that you're showing up as fully yourself for a session, grounding exercises or mantras or rituals that you put in before or during sessions?
Well, for me personally, I believe it starts with my own self-awareness and recognizing my own fears. If I have any self protection that may be in that space. So recognizing that, naming that. I do believe coaches need supportive communities where they can process these experiences honestly, and organizations in coaching institutions also have a responsibility to create cultures where, authenticity, it's not penalized. And the more psychologically safe a coach feels, the more emotionally available and present they become. So going back, I sort of gave you like an extended answer, but what I would say for me, a practice is I have to practice self-awareness in that moment, in real time. I like to name what it is that I'm feeling in that moment in real time. And if there is some resistance in the background, I name it before I even engage in that conversation so that I can learn to self-regulate, so that I can learn to be fully present, to sort of like, once you name it, you sort of dealing with it, and then you become present rather than have something in the space as you're attempting to have a coaching conversation with someone else.
So you, in the writing of this blog, you bring up a really interesting point, and that's that the clients of coaches are oftentimes told to bring their full selves to coaching sessions and encouraged to just show up and have this be a space where you can work on yourself in any way. And that's not always afforded to coaches in the same way. And so how, in your mind, can coaches work on showing up as fully themselves to their coaching sessions?
I would go back to what I said previously. Again, it starts with self-awareness. It starts with recognizing where fear and self-protection may exist. I think that's number one. That is absolutely necessary for the coach to have awareness of that so that they can show up fully as themselves. And I also, like I said before, I think that as coaches, we need a supportive community where, we can process these experiences honestly and openly without judgment. And if an organization or a coaching institution, is available to that coach, they also have a responsibility to create a culture where authenticity is not penalized. I believe, again, coaching is founded on transparency and authenticity. So if organizations or coaching institutions do not create cultures where authenticity is embraced, then we're not supportive. We're not creating a space to support coaches. And in not supporting coaches, we're not supporting their clients as well. I also believe the more, again, like I said earlier, the more psychologically safe a coach feels, the more emotionally available and present they become.
What do you think is blocking coaches, specifically queer coaches, from showing up as themselves in their coaching engagements?
I mean, the obvious fear of rejection or bias. Number one, concerns about credibility or marketability. If I show up authentically, would people hire me? Previous experiences of exclusion, judgment, or microaggressions. That happens all the time. Internalized messaging that professionalism requires minimizing your identity. By the way, Austin, this is a real story. One of the people, a leader in the program, my coaching program, this is years ago when I first got certified as a coach and I started building my website. They told me I should not be open about being married to my husband. That is what creates the possibility of not showing up authentically, blocking a coach, especially us, in the queer community from showing up authentically. And this is what we're dealing with right now in our country. This is this broader cultural climate that can make visibility feel emotionally risky because there is a very direct attack happening in our community or to our community.
Thank you so much for sharing that story about what happened in that coaching program. I want to use that kind of as an example of like how queer coaches can handle facing discrimination. When you heard that from your coach trainer about hide this part of yourself, I mean, how did you respond to that? How did you handle that interaction?
At first, I questioned myself. I thought, oh, maybe I should. But I sat with it and then I said, no, absolutely not. I am somebody who very early on in life, I learned to honor me. But many people may not be in that same position. And that's my point. Somebody saying that to someone who may already, experience some fragility about who they are and their identity, of course, that could create that space for them to say, "Ooh, I better not be authentic. I guess I have to hide this part of me, this part of who I am. That is the essence of who I am, because that's what I've been told." By the way, I did not follow suit with that. If you look at my website, coachelix.com, I'm very open about being married. I've been married for 33 years. And if it's that is a website that is available to everyone, it's in my professional bio as well. I think my philosophy is if you don't want to hire me because this is who I am, that's okay. There'll be somebody else that will hire me because this is who I am.
You mentioned, there's that fear of rejection or bias that queer coaches might be experiencing in terms of showing up as authentically themselves. But you're kind of directly addressing that head on of saying, I'm going to be very clear about my identity and who I am. And you can make a decision based off of that. And it kind of then alleviate some of that stress or worry of not knowing where a client might be coming from. Because if you are very authentic and transparent and vulnerable and they make a decision, you can move accordingly versus worrying about what they might do.
Exactly.
As you're looking to build spaces that are supporting queer coaches and their ability to show up fully as themselves and deal with some of these issues like the fear of rejection, what support should coaches have if they feel unable to share their identity?
I believe that most importantly, access to affirming communities and peer support, spaces where psychological safety is intentionally created. I would say mentorship and supervision that includes identity awareness, maybe clear organizational values around inclusion and belonging, emotional support that helps individuals regulate fear, shame, and isolation. And honestly, as I'm thinking of all of this, that is why the LGBTQ plus discussion group in the Institute of Coaching is an important space, because that is a space where we can support anyone who is feeling that they have not had a space or they've been unable to share their identity fully.
Ready to advance your coaching practice? Join the Institute of Coaching and tap into the world's leading resource for coaching science and professional development. With over 4,000 members across 130 countries, the IOC offers invaluable networking opportunities with an elite global coaching community and innovative learning to broaden your knowledge and keep you at the forefront of coaching best practices. Engage in cutting-edge learning events with world-renowned coaching scholars, from webinars and seminars to discussion groups, research projects, and more. Try any membership free for 30 days. Use promo code IOC Podcast and visit instituteofcoaching.org/join to get started.
Yeah. And For anyone listening in, we have Elix started this group a little over a year ago with the Institute. That's a space for queer coaches, for LGBTQ coaches to come together and be able to talk with like-minded individuals and allies. I would love to hear from, your perspective, Elix. What was the process like of deciding that this was a space that you wanted to start building?
For me, it was a very simple process. I wanted our voice to be heard. And as you were part of that, because, I started looking for allies and people in our community that would be supportive of getting the Institute to approve the discussion group. But the process for me was simple. We need representation. We need our voice to be heard. There's so many coaches who are part of the queer community. We have so many allies, Austin, because the discussion group is open to allies as well who want to work with our community, who want to understand and support our community. And it was an easy way to create that space for all of us. And I'm super happy that we have this space available.
So for you as a coach, getting to build this space, what has it felt like getting onto a call and getting to meet other queer coaches from around the country or the United States or even around the world?
Listen, it's sometimes it gives you a perspective that it's surprising to me. Now, I live in Cape Cod. We live in a state that is very open, that is very inclusive. And the discussion group has given me the opportunity to meet people who are not living in spaces like that, who are living in spaces where they feel oppressed. Again, going back to the distinction, listening to connect, right? To have the opportunity to listen, to connect to somebody else's world, to another coach or maybe an ally who lives in a place where they're not free to say, I'm a member of this community without the risk of being attacked or bullied or marginalized. It's been a great opportunity to learn and to be present to the life and to the world, to somebody else's world, somebody who identifies in the same way I identify with my community, yet their experiences is so far different from mine, and having to learn to have empathy, because again, we can't bring judgment into those conversations. So you got to bring empathy to the conversation.
You've brought up the idea of listening to connect, and I'm curious, are there any specific, tenets to that concept that come to mind for you when you consider this idea of listening to connect? Is there a specific approach that you have? Is there a skill set that you've kind of built up a little bit to be listening with that unique perspective to get to know other people better and to connect with them as best as possible?
Well, listening to connect is a distinction that was created by Judith Glaser. So I give her full credit. I love this woman, by the way. She was incredible. She was amazing. And she has taught me everything I know about neuroscience. And I carry her legacy with a lot of pride. But listening to connect, really how to best step into that distinction is by understanding first and foremost that we are all hardwired to listen to confirmed, to listen to validate, to listen to justify. There's all kinds of listening, and they're not wrong listenings. It's okay to listen to confirm. It's okay to listen to validate and justify. But listening to connect, it's deeper. Listening to connect is listening while you put yourself in somebody else's world. Not your world about their world, by the way. because that's still putting a filter, of your own filter into their world. No, it's about really putting yourself in their world. That is listening to connect. When you are listening to connect, you are simply living in somebody else's world. It's really that simple. And it is a practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. And you may notice that as you're perhaps thinking that you're listening to connect, your mind is listening to judge or listening to evaluate. And you got to learn to pay attention. Self-awareness is everything. Pay attention so that you can regulate in the moment in real time. You can say, hey, are you doing that thing again? That's not what we're doing. We're really listening to connect to somebody else's world. Listening to connect can create a whole new experience and a whole new world for coaches, clients, and everyone alike.
So I'm curious. I'm interested in the listening to connect being a specific approach or way that you show up to clients and in coaching sessions. You've written a little bit about the idea of vigilance and the overplay of vigilance, where individuals are kind of always being aware and noticing what may be going on around them. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what do you think the impact of a coach listening to connect might have on a client who is experiencing an overplay of vigilance?
I love that you're connecting the distinction to the writing about congruence resulting in vigilance. So vigilance is our nervous system constantly scanning for threat, for judgment, or rejection. And that can lead to emotional exhaustion. It can lead to anxiety, self-monitoring, and burnout. And over time, hypervigilance reduces creativity and connection. And when people are protecting themselves, they have less energy available for growth or for learning or for authentic connection. Listening to connect, it's understanding. So the moment, by the way, if vigilant is impacting your nervous system and you're feeling a threat, judgment, and rejection, listening to connect is asking yourself, is that an experience that the other person may be feeling as well? Am I feeling that? Am I listening to connect to my own feeling about how my nervous system is responding? But then it's also important that we listen as we're having conversations, maybe with a client, maybe with another coach, maybe, with a boss. You got to listen to connect. You got to listen to understand their world. When you listen to connect, you may understand, oh, wait a minute. They're experiencing their own nervous system, a threat or a judgment, or maybe they're experiencing rejection, and listening to connect allows you then to ask deeper questions. Judith Glaser used to call that double clicking. You then ask questions to better understand what may be happening for that other individual. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it ties in to the concept also you brought up of emotionally taxing energy. And we've definitely covered some of these topics already, but just to reiterate for our listeners, what are some actions that coaches can take that can help reduce emotionally taxing energy, kind of just to add to everything you've shared so far?
I would say at the top of my list would be naming inclusion explicitly, interrupting biased language and behaviors, expanding representation in leadership and coaching spaces, which is what we're doing here, by the way, creating environments where people can feel psychologically safe, which is part of what we do with our discussion group, building a supportive peer community, practicing self-regulation in nervous system awareness. By the way, that is for me something, again, I learned from Judith Glaser, understanding our own nervous system and how we can regulate what we're experiencing in the moment. And then I would say encouraging conversations rooted in curiosity rather than assumption.
Getting close to wrapping up, one last question for you. What would you say is your hope for shared belonging in the coaching community? As you look towards the future of coaching, what does belonging look like for queer coaches and coaches of all backgrounds?
Yeah, I love the question. And I wholeheartedly believe the future of coaching depends on our ability to create spaces where people do not have to choose between authenticity and belonging. Coaching should be a profession where humanity is not edited out. And belonging really allows all of us to access creativity, self-courage, vulnerability, our own growth. So the future of coaching is not just about performance, if you will, showing up, looking a certain way, if you will. It's really about human connection.
And you're building an incredible space at the Institute that allows people to be on that journey and working on that directly. For anyone listening to today's episode, how can people be connecting with you and the work that you're doing? How would you want people to reach you?
Super easy. Coach Elix, anywhere on social media, LinkedIn. That is my handle. I also have a show every Friday at 1 p.m. It's called Get a Grip with Coach Elix. It's available on any podcast platform. By the way, it's a live radio show, so you can listen live every Friday at 1 p.m. on WARA 1320 AM radio, or you can stream live at wararadio.com. That's how you can get a hold of me.
Thank you so much, Elix. As always, it's such a pleasure to get to spend some time with you. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Austin.
And for all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Coaching Revealed. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaching Revealed, brought to you by the Institute of Coaching. You can learn more about the Institute on our website at instituteofcoaching.org. You can stay up to date with new episodes of our podcast by liking and following Coaching Revealed. You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X with the handle Institute of Coaching. We also love hearing from our guests, so please reach out to us with thoughts you have on this episode and any questions you have about coaching. Until next time, this is Emily Tarani with Coaching Revealed.